Thanksgiving, Dragonlance, and old soldiers. GameMasters here, and I'm not exactly talking about turkey, dressing, and cranberry sauce, but rather I'm referring to giving thanks to evolution. Ever since Dragonlance was announced for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, folks have been coming out, bashing it, and giving many others grief over it. Passion about what Dragonlance was runs deep. There's no question about that. How Dragonlance was presented back in 2nd edition was... It was a grand scale of history and lore, and the 1980s were a different time altogether for this dice-rolling game called Dungeons & Dragons. Those of us that played, we were outcasts. We were seen as nerds, as folks to not be understood because we sat for hours playing a strange game of fantasy creatures like elves and dwarves. And it was often that we were made fun of by the very people that would paint their faces up just to watch two teams of players throw a ball of simulated pigskin back and forth for hours on Sunday or Monday night. There was definitely irony in that. But as the most recent season of Stranger Things pointed out, we were also targeted, unjustly, by the media as being satanic. The media thought that what we were doing was sitting around a kitchen table and summoning demons and devils, that we were attacking and destroying the conventional view of religion. That forced a lot of players to stop altogether. I personally know of a friend whose parents took all of his Dungeons & Dragons material and burned it in their backyard. But the view of Dungeons & Dragons has evolved over the years. Now it's become fairly mainstream. You can find the books available in almost any given Target or Walmart store. Digital access to the entire library of D&D books is beyond easy to come by, and it's no longer played by outcasts or nerds. It is a game now played by millions of people. Even schools have accepted it into their libraries, and there are role-playing clubs that have been set up specifically to give kids something to do after school. Not only has the view of Dungeons & Dragons evolved, so has the game itself. Everything evolves. It has to, or it'll get left behind. Horses used to be the main way to get around from one place to another. Then along came the evolution of the car. Yes, there's still some folks that use horses, but I promise you're not going to see anyone galloping away on a horse down the interstate around Dallas, Texas. Dragonlance is the newest rendition of Dungeons & Dragons setting to see an evolution, yet there have been a vocal few that refuse it. Then that's perfectly okay to reject it. But there have been some that are bleeding into comment sections across different YouTube channels, bombarding blogs that write about Dragonlance and blasting the writers in those comment areas. There are a toxic bunch that are seemingly out on an agenda. I'll give you an example. Someone in a comment on one of my videos tried to bait me into an argument as they felt the artwork in the new Dragonlance book was terrible. I simply responded that the best thing about artwork is that it is subjective. Oh, Stanky didn't like that. They shot back with, "That's what people with worthless degrees say." To which I replied, "If you say so." They really didn't like that, and they commented back, "It's a fact. You can't change the way Luke Skywalker looks and dresses, the color of his lightsabers, and expect people to say, 'That's Luke Skywalker,' without an in-lore change event. The same goes for Dragonlance characters, therefore it's not subjective. You can't expect people to like the art that is nothing like the actual descriptions and art originally laid out by the creators themselves. Your excuse is incredibly dumb and arrogant. It's a classic liberal arts excuse to not respect the source. It doesn't make you sound smart, it makes you sound like an idiot." I simply agreed with him. I mean, I could have gone on to say that Luke Skywalker's lightsaber color did change from blue to green, and that the way he looked and dressed was also different from Empire Strikes Back to Return of the Jedi, and we didn't see an in-lore change of event. We never saw him build a new lightsaber. We never saw him actually train and become a Jedi and wear the black Jedi robes. It just happened, and we were simply expected to accept it. But perhaps Stanky is right. Perhaps I actually am an idiot. I mean, I'm creating content. I'm putting my face on the screen. I'm offering up my views. And only a stupid person would think that the entire world is going to love them and agree with them. I don't assume that. I'm never going to tell anyone that my way is the only way and that if you don't like it, shove off. I don't chase subscribers. In fact, I rarely ask anyone to subscribe. The extent that I do ask is that, for the thumbs up. If you enjoy the video, I'll always be grateful for that. But if you come into my house, drop trow, and take a shit, I'm going to hold you accountable. What we are seeing is a group that once was shunned back in the beginning of the game's origins. They themselves are now shunning fellow players, insulting them, berating them. Talk about irony. Dungeons & Dragons has always been a game where the Dungeon Master and players can mold it and make it their own. There was never a hard, fast rule that stated, "Our way is the only way, and if you don't like that, shove off." There are simply some folks that refuse to evolve from what the game used to be, even though the game itself has. But here's the awesome part. It also hasn't evolved. You can still find all the original versions of Dungeons & Dragons. If you want to remain in the 80s and 90s and play that version of the game, by all means, run with that. Hell, we still run a classic campaign about twice a year in my group. If this 5th edition version of Dragonlance and Dungeons & Dragons isn't your cup of tea, then by all means, don't play it. But don't condemn someone who does choose to play it, or at the very least, take your infinite wisdom of role-playing mechanics, infallible insight of marketing, superior knowledge of negotiation of getting the best deal for bookbinding, extensive know-how of shipping and logistics, and your big red crayon and fix everything that is wrong with Dungeons & Dragons. Go set up a Kickstarter, let me know what it is, and I'll be among the first to rush in and support your tabletop role-playing game if it's a good product. But if you can't manage that simple task, then go get yourself some bubble wrap and pop away until the wee hours of the morning. You're going to get a lot more satisfaction from that than you will from typing random things to strangers trying to insult people from a newly created troll account, thinking to yourself,
I own.
I've also encountered a few folks that don't have any desire to play 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons because they prefer the past editions, and that's 100% perfectly fine. As mentioned, those books and modules can still be obtained. But guess what? They don't go out of their way to ridicule or condemn. They respect that different gamers are attracted to different games. They lurk in comments, but have never been disrespectful. And I am thankful for their words and their comments because that promotes a good, healthy discussion. And giving thanks is what this is all about. I am thankful that we have seen an evolution of the game and an evolution of the players. No longer are we stuck in our basements at our childhood home trying to hide away from the nervous eyes of someone trying to condemn us or accuse us of trying to summon Satan. No longer are we wearing diapers and crying because someone took away our favorite toys. Well, most of us don't. I'm also thankful that there are those among you that have given me a small platform here to share my thoughts, and I'd just like to say that even if you are in a location that does not celebrate Thanksgiving, thank you for watching, and until next our paths cross, may you have a grand feast.